Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dennis O'Shea, and good morning to those in Australia and New Zealand. We're very pleased to bring you this webinar this afternoon on Microsoft PowerApps. And I'm joined this afternoon by two of my colleagues. And firstly, my name is Dennis. I'm the founder and CEO of Mobile Mentor. And with me is Shane Sloan. He's a mobile architect. And then Julie Strauss, a group program manager for Microsoft, is with us as well. And so our plan on this webinar is to provide you with all the assistance and resources we possibly can to help you get started on your own mobile journey with PowerApps. And I've got a delay in changing slides. What we need to do. Okay, so what we intend to cover is a brief explanation of the mobile app development categories and where rapid app development fits into that. Secondly, we're going to show you a development demo, and my colleague Shane is going to do that, and he's going to take on some considerable risk in developing an app for you live on screen and then publishing it to a mobile device. And then we're going to ask him to change it and update the app, and he's going to get all that working on a couple of sequential demos. Then Julie is going to talk about the PowerApps roadmap and how the PowerApps development environment is going to change over the coming months and years. Then I'll pick up at the end and talk about security and deployment around PowerApps, and then we'll finish with some additional resources which will help you get started. So to get underway, I'd like to give a brief recap of development tool sets and the categories of development. So if we think about a continuum where we've got user experience and value on one axis and then cost on the other, then we've probably all used something like Citrix Receiver in the past to publish apps and capability to an iPad or a mobile device. And it was a useful way to get started, but it was a bit clunky, but it achieved an outcome when it was needed to. The second category, which we're going to focus on today, is the low-code category, and in particular, PowerApps. The third category is one of transformation. We've got some companies here like Powwow and Capriza, where you can transform a legacy desktop application into a mobile app in a way that enables you to extend the life of your legacy application and give a new mobile experience. And of course, then we're all very familiar with hybrid apps, where we code once and run an app on an Android, an iOS, or a browser session. And then finally, if we really need to create the ultimate user experience, we build native apps. So we get as close as possible to the hardware extraction layer, and we can use all the native capabilities provided to us by the hardware manufacturers. So we're going to drill into PowerApps because we're excited about this technology. We've been using it for a few months. We've had some good experience, and we know that a lot of clients find this a great way to energize their organization and to stimulate innovation in a way that might not be possible by using a longer and more expensive app development process. And it's worth recapping on that for a moment. So if we think about the infinite loop of work that's required for any successful app, and we think about how you get started on the right-hand side there, design at 3 o'clock on this picture. There's obviously a lot of work at the front end in getting an enterprise app built. And this often starts off with use case workshops and some technical design and doing a bit of research, and then a write-up where we ultimately end up with the architecture. We end up with some API development or some integration requirements. We end up with a security model, a data model. We end up with wireframes and cost estimates and user interface designs and a Gantt chart. And that's a typical way we would start an enterprise app project. But what PowerApps does is it energizes people to go straight from brainstorming to sitting down and coding very, very quickly and getting straight into working on an app and the concept for an app. So we believe it's ideal for internal employees, so people who are on your Active Directory environment. And it's ideal for organizations who have their services in the Azure cloud. If you're still on-prem, this is going to be problematic. PowerApps is also ideal for what we call citizen developers. So people who may not have a lot of coding experience. That might be a project engineer, it might be a support analyst, it might be a business analyst. And then if we want to push out frequent app updates or push out app updates quickly without having to go through the approval process of putting on the iTunes Store or the Google Play Store, PowerApps is very effective. Also, if we're building apps that need to use the GPS, the camera, the accelerometer, and some basic barcode scanning, we're all good for that. If we're accessing data sources within the Microsoft environment, such as SharePoint, SQL, OneDrive, we're all good for that. And if we're using pre-built connectors, and there are about 100 of those, I believe, to third parties such as Dropbox and Jira and many others, we can easily connect to them. And if we're working with the Microsoft Common Data Service, then PowerApps is great. And you may want to use it when there is not a substantial budget for an enterprise app project, or it's not a high priority within an organization, and when rapid prototyping and user-driven design is required, and you can see it, you've got a clear line of sight to an opportunity to digitize a paper-based process. This is where we believe PowerApps is really powerful. And of course, PowerApps gives us the ability to very quickly get going with the user interface, but below the surface, we've got all the infrastructure, all the security, all the different environments in place that we would need to build an app. And we spent a few months working with this environment, and Shane in particular has some tremendous experience. And here's a simple example of one we did for capturing vital signs for nursing workloads. And so I'd like to hand over to my colleague Shane to give you a demo now, a live demo of building something in PowerApps. Over to you, Shane.
Thank you, Dennis. Again, my name is Shane, and I am a mobile solutions architect. And what I'm going to show you today, first, is the finished product here. So this is what I'm going to build in the next few minutes. This is a simple inventory app. So you could manage the inventory of several of your sites. So we have Nashville, Auckland, and Sydney. Okay. And I can pick a detail and I can update it. I can delete the item, or I can go back. I can also add. So admittedly, this is pretty simple, but I'm trying to build something in the confines of a web conference. So we want to keep it nice and short. So without further ado, here we go. So first you'll notice that I'm in a web browser, and I'm actually in Internet Explorer right now, but you can do this in any of the web browsers, it's fine. And this is a web-based development platform. So I can build directly from my browser, which is kind of neat. And this is what the environment looks like. So this is a Canvas app. And so as you can see, I just have a nice blank screen. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting things in there that I want to see. And I may be a little bit quiet while I do some of this stuff. So some of these controls may not be familiar to you, and that's okay. For the purposes of speed and not boring some of the people to death, I'm not going to go into great explanations on all of this. But I just want you to see that I'm adding items and functionality to this application, and I'm doing so without coding. And then I want a drop down. All right. And as you can see now, they don't really say anything important. They're just all default. So, but if I want to change, start to change things, then I can go into the properties on this. And for example, it has a text property. Change it. Oops. Let's do it. Good. All right. Give us there, and then I want to add a screen for the other part. And the other screen I want to edit for. Okay. So in a few seconds, I've set up more or less the basic framework that I want to have in there. I'm going to add a delete button just to have it in there, and then I'm going to start circling back to clean up a few things and make them look better, and start hooking in the behavior. The first thing I want to highlight is data sources. So with a Power App, one of the things that you'll want to do is you'll want to connect it to a data source. And I'm going to circle back to this in a minute once I publish this app. And I'm going to show you all the data sources that are available. For now, I'm just going to connect to our test database, and I'm going to use it. And for those of you that might be technical in nature, I do want you to understand that this is necessarily contrived. I'm using a flat table format, which isn't very realistic. But for the purposes of a webinar, it fits the bill. If you're interested in finding out about something more complex, just email me after the presentation, and we can dive into stuff and get as technical as you'd like. Okay. So I'm going to start to edit this gallery here, and I'm going to change it to use this database table. I don't want pictures, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. All right. And now I get to choose what I want here. So body, I want the quantity. There we go. All right. So I'm making changes to the way this control shows everything. And I notice I'm still not having to put much code in. And then I'm going to just move this over here just for visual purposes. And then let's make this a bit smaller. There we go. Perfect. All right. Now I've got something that looks pretty good. Okay. Then for the drop down, I probably want to have something just a little bit more technical. So I'm going to put distinct. And notice it automatically suggests a connection that I've established. And then I'm going to pick a column name here. Column name is cool. And now if I check it in just a second, it should show up. Yay, there we go. Cool. So the final thing I want to do is I want to make this have a behavior. And this on select. So one of the things that you will have to do code for, and again, this is why this is called low code and not no code, is that to add behaviors to it. So in other words, when I click a button, what's it going to do? I'm going to have to put at least a little bit of stuff in there. As you can see, it's as you start to type, it suggests things for you. It'll tell you, it suggests relevant things. So like I probably want to go to the other screen and it knows that. And then for whatever other things, it gives suggestions all the way through. So to someone that's not an advanced coder or is new to the system, this will do a good job of giving you, helpful hints along the way. And we can circle back a little bit on some of the other stuff that's available there as well. Navigate to screen 2. Okay, and so that sets up my first screen entirely. And now I'm going to switch over to this screen for a second. I'm going to do a few things on it. And so the data source is going to be gallery 1. And so I've connected to this table, and again, it's going to ask me a few things like, what do you want to display? I don't have to display all of them if I don't want to. I'm going to go ahead and put them all in there, though, just so that I have them. With the exception of ID, I'm not going to worry about that. And then I'm going to have it put some more navigates in there so that it'll go back and forth between the apps as I choose things. Yeah. So while I am adding things, notice that I'm not having to do more than essentially a single line of code in any of this, which is really nice. Okay. And then this one, for example, it doesn't have white. So I'm going to go over here to this properties area, and I'm just going to change the color. And again, I don't have to load a CSS file or deal with any kind of code level complexity to that. I can just actually change the color there, which is great. And this is probably the most complex item that I'm having to do here. And this is about as involved as it's going to get for this, which is great. I will tell you, if you want to do offline access or some of the more complex features in here that you can end up having to put several lines of stuff into some of these properties, but it really still, compared to a traditional application, is much more simple. Okay, so this is just matching up the ID of the table, and then it's going to delete based on that. And I believe, oh, and I want to tell it to navigate back. Okay, cool. That's it. So that's the whole app. So how long was that? 6 minutes? It's not bad. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to deploy it. So what does it look like when you finish? And just to show you the behavior here. Yeah, let's preview it real quick. Does it work? Why don't you display? Oh, I have to open it. This is why we have testing in apps. Sorry for live stuff. That's how it goes.
We expected a change.
Yeah, that's how it goes, right? It works all great until it doesn't. Data source equals. Gallery 1. There we go. That hard. I'm not going to worry about it for now. In the process of moving on, I'm going to go ahead and push forward. So one of the things you'll want to do is you'll want to save this, and then we're going to name the app. So I'm going to call this live demonstration app. Okay. And then I may want to go to the settings here and change the icon or something like that. So I'm going to choose a nice green color so that we can tell it's live, and I'm going to put a star on it. Why not? Okay. Oh, and it didn't save that. Live demonstration app. Okay. All right, and so what it's doing right now is it's generating a Power App, and this is going to get put out into the field. One of the other things you'll probably want to do with this app is share it to people. So let's go ahead and look and see what that looks like. After you create a Power App and you want to add users to it, there's two ways to do that. One is either through a security group, for those of you that are familiar with Active Directory and Azure. The other way is you just add users one by one. So for example, if I want to add Dennis O'Shea, and I click on him, and there we go, he can use it. If I want him to be able to edit it, if he's another developer, I can give him the access to edit it. I click save.
Please don't.
Yeah, that would be super dangerous on a production app, so we don't do that. Yeah, it should go through in just a moment. Okay. And then I also want to caveat this. So one of the things I want to tell you about is this goes out into the Microsoft cloud, and you know it's broken up into a few regions, but essentially it's a big global cloud. So this will not immediately make it to my phone. And to show you that, I'm going to just real quickly switch to my phone here, and I'm going to show you my PowerApps app, and then I'm going to refresh. And what I should see is I should see the red one that I already made prior to the demonstration, but I don't yet. Oh, I do see the green one. How about that? So that's pretty quick. So this is quicker than our practice, so that's not bad. So sometimes it's lightning fast. Sometimes it can take 2 to 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, depending on how busy it is. But that was it. So you're seeing something that I created from scratch, pushed all the way through, and now it's actually on my phone live. And this is the same experience you'll get within your tenant or your organization when you create PowerApps. And that's it. This is pulling from a real database. It's a SQL database on our test server, and it's located in the Australian cloud. So you're looking at something that's pretty far away. So that's PowerApps, and that's really powerful. I'm going to switch it back to my screen real quick. Yeah, switch it back to my screen.
So now you're going to make a change to that app.
That's correct. So now what I want to show you is what rapid iteration looks like. So let's say that I've got this app, and I want to go back to, that's the one I want. Go ahead and use. Okay. Let's say Dennis says, well, hey, that's great, man, but I really need to be able to put a signature in there because I want my auditors to be able to use their signature so we can make sure that we have the right people on it. So I'm going to create a pen control here. move this thing down. Let's just make it pretty. And while I'm at it, let me fix this thing.
Nice.
There we go. Okay. A bug fix, live the dream. All right. So, so now I've made this change to it. And if I play this, let me start from the other screen so it'll properly pull the item to it. And I select it. Now I've got this pen tool and I can write in it. That's the best handwriting you've ever seen. And now I can save this item. So let's go ahead and save that. And it's going to, now that it's not an initial save and I've got a subsequent version, it's going to give me an additional option to publish. So if I don't publish this, then essentially it's a development version and it will not be seen by other users. I can look at it within this create portal, but it's not in production. If I click publish, conversely, then it's going to make that go live and it's going to push that out. And so again, I'll tell you that this is going into the Microsoft cloud, and it may not be an exactly instant distribution to my phone. It may take a couple of minutes. So
and this is a round trip from the US to Australia.
Yeah, right. So, but you know, it's still pretty frequent, and so that's it. Now, I'll also caveat that with saying that just because I added a pen control doesn't mean that that gets saved into the database. So if you guys are technically, you know, knowledgeable, then understand that the point is just to be able to show that to Dennis and he can say, hey, I like it. And if he does like it, great. Now I can go build the back end to be able to handle an image of a signature and we can add that in and all that.
Yeah.
While we wait, I wanted to take the time to talk a bit about the connections that are available. So let me show you some of that. So one of the powerful things about PowerApps is that it's got all of these different connections that are available. And so I'm just going to kind of quickly scatter through a few of them. And as you can see, I'm moving a screen at a time, and the bar is barely moving. So there are plenty of connectors, and they're not all to Microsoft things. There are a lot of external tools that are available. I believe Twitter's in there, Dropbox is in there, Jira is in there, and there are many others. They come in two kinds. Some are standard, some are premium. The premium has some additional costs, which I won't get into at this time, but they are available if you are inclined to use them. And when you connect to them, the connection is very easy to set up. And once it's set up, you can work directly with the data inside the PowerApps without the complexity of worrying about API definitions and a lot of the other technical debt that comes along with trying to build in native or hybrid or any of the more complex setups. The other thing that's worth mentioning too is that there happens to be a thing called the Common Data Service. And so Microsoft has prepared a whole bunch of standard data formats or data entities, if you want to call them that are available for you. And so these, if you have the correct licensing to be able to use the Common Data Service, these all come along for the ride, and they're pre-built and they're very easy to work with, and you can even create your own. So essentially this democratizes the ability to create database tables so that you don't need to be as technical in order to create your own data storage, which is really cool. Okay, let's see if we made it into my app in my phone.
Let's switch over.
Yeah. Really powers into this. Let's see what happens if I refresh here. And there it is.
There it is. Well done.
So there you go. And other than my signature looks like a kindergartner, that's it. So we created an app from scratch. We deployed it. We went back in and rapidly iterated a change, and we deployed that. And we're still probably just barely over 10 minutes. That's not bad. That's pretty cool. Okay, let me go back to my laptop, and I'm going to finish up my section and hand it over. So let's talk about we've kind of showed you what Power Apps are good for to some extent. Let's talk about what Power Apps are not going to be good for, because I don't want you to think that this is panacea and that it's going to solve all your problems and for everything. Power Apps are not going to be good for external users because it works within the Microsoft Office 365 licensing model. So you need to have an Office 365 license, which means that if you want to make a customer-facing app, you need to give them an Office 365 license on your network. That's probably not going to work. So again, that's not going to work well. What is it not good for? It's not good for complex integration and large data sets. So if I want to connect through XML data power and do customized, whitelisted backends and a lot of stuff that's super secure, that's probably not going to be good for a Power App. Power App is great for basic workflow type of activities, but it's not going to be good for a large, super large enterprise level, highly complex data type of setup. It's just not built for that. And then there are some other limitations, which Julie will probably address to some extent later on, about if there's only a control, if there's a control that exists, Power Apps works great. So it's very good at what it has available for you. But if there is not a control available for you, then you can't really extend the Power Apps platform, at least not currently. So for example, there's no QR reader, there's no RFID reader, there's no NFC tag, and there's no Bluetooth beacon readers. The barcode scanner exists, but it's not great, or at least the one that's in there right now. That's my opinion. Shane's 2 cents, not official speak. And then there are some more advanced things, like if you need to do advanced swipe gestures, if you want to integrate AR, VR, biometrics, video gyroscope, any of the really, really, really complex low-level hardware type of interface components, you probably don't want a Power App. And that's okay. It's just not meant for that. And so how far can we go with a Power App? Well, Power Apps was released and Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was around October of 2016, if I'm correct. And from then until now, in 2 years, it's come a long way. And as you saw, it can create apps very, very quickly. The roadmap is going to increase, and I'll let Julie get into that because I don't want to steal too much of her thing here. But know that we're getting to a point with this thing where not only will you be able to create apps that can do basic data entry and apps that are good for, say, a simple task like inventory management or site audits or standard work audits, things like that. But it's going to be able to do a lot more powerful stuff. And again, it's exceedingly fast to work with. It's exceedingly quick to iterate on. And it's for what it's intended to do really, really well. I'm a huge fan of it. Okay. With that, I'm going to hand it back over to Dennis.
That's to Julie.
Oh, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Julie.
The roadmap. Thank you, Shane.
Yeah, no problem.
Well done with the demos.
Yeah, can you see my screen?
We can.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to talk about the roadmap. I'll talk about the roadmap in 2 kind of flavors. We really have 2 major release cadences throughout the year. We have one in October and one in April. So we do release features on an incremental basis, but these are kind of our 2 marketing moments. So the first part, I'm going to talk to what is literally releasing as we speak. So some of these features are available now. Some of them are coming any day now. And then when we have talked through those features, I want to talk through like the next 6 months, what is coming there. So,
Julie, you're
yeah.
not on full screen. You're showing the preview, the next slide as well.
Say that again.
You're showing the next slide.
Oh,
as well as the current slide.
Let's see. Let me just stop this one. Hold on. I thought I was actually sharing the presentation. Let me just do this. For some reason, it's actually hanging right now.
We can do it from this end if you like.
I think that might be a good idea. Just give me 1 second, see if it actually changes. Yeah, I think you better take it from there then.
Okay. So how do I take control?
Let's start sharing.
I'll stop sharing.
Share screen. Okay, that should be working.
Yeah, it does.
There we go.
Thank
Full screen.
So for the imminent releases, that is really features that are just about to hit live status now, or some of them already have. And I have detailed slides for some of these, so I'm just going to hit the first two ones, which is really around kind of our investments in interface updates. So I think what we have seen so far in connection with PowerApps has really been what we think about as Canvas apps. We have two types of apps, which is really one set is driven from data, like you map out your entire business process, define your infrastructure, and we wrap UI around it. That is really what we call model apps. They have actually been in market for years and years. Now it released, you said, for like 18 months ago, a new set of capabilities, which is Canvas apps, which is what we've seen so far, much more for the technical business user. We're kind of bringing these two environments together. So in essence, we have a full spectrum where you can start as a business user, do very interactive apps the way you saw Shane just did it, all the way to a professional developer environment where you can build your own controls and kind of integrate that as part of a larger project. So these two user interfaces we keep continuous to update and improve. We add new designers to it all the time. So these are kind of the two investments areas you will see come out as we speak. If you go to the next slide. Some of the investment areas in quality is really about, as you build solutions and start sharing, not just with you, just for your own and your immediate team, as you got to reach to greater scale, you want to make sure that the quality of them are just high quality. So for that, we are looking at all the kind of different apps that are being built and look at kind of static analysis of what are the rules and regulations you want to follow to design for a very performant app. So now we have the ability to run your app or your solution through a solution checker where we kind of check for quality and give you a heads up before you even roll it out. So that can happen at solution layer or level as well as the application layer. If you go to the next slide. So that is really around kind of the quality tracking. Another part of quality improvements are really for the admin, for the administrator of the tenant, which is monitoring the environment and all the different kind of apps. There we are kind of bringing usage statistics to the administrator group. So you can see across all the different applications you have up and running, what is the performance, what is the usability, which type of users are engaging, are there any issues? Like over time, we'll add more and more insights into your entire environment, where you can also see like what are the APIs that are used, what is the storage, etc. So this is really bringing a very kind of intuitive, analytical view for your tenant admin, so you can administer at scale. If you go to the next slide. So this is about, the next area is really about increased flexibility. You say, I talked about the two different app design environments where you can start merging these together. So for example, if you wanted to take the app that Shane just built and embed that into a formal business process that as part of a larger app, you can essentially start embedding apps into each other. And that kind of gets you to a higher degree of flexibility for what you can actually build. We have a bucket for what we call unifying application lifecycle management. This is really about, you saw a little glimpse of it when you publish, you can see versioning, etc. With this any day now, you can also start to package up applications and flows. We haven't really talked about flows, but you can build kind of approval workflows, etc., that you can package up as a unified solution, which you can also share with other tenants as well. So that's another area. If you switch to the next slide. This is really the last bucket that I want to talk through now for what is coming any day now. One part is actually SharePoint integration. So PowerApps is not only kind of our customization UI for Dynamics applications and a UI and a platform for building your own applications that as we just saw, it is also actually customization UI and experience for SharePoint. So if you're building a form in SharePoint, you're really using that same environment that Shane displayed to you. So it's really about creating like a common user experience, not just for business applications, but also across to Office. And we continue to invest in that area. And then for PowerApps control framework, this actually touched to what has to date been perceived some of the weaker areas that we point out where it's not good. It's essentially your ability to create any control you want. So we have enabled a control framework where a pro developer can develop controls using high code, make these available, particularly within model-driven apps. So you can start creating your own controls that we may not deliver out of the box. And really, like, there's literally no limits now for how flexible and extensive you can make those applications. So that's pretty powerful. It's still in preview, but we'll be working more on that as time goes on. Now, I think if you go to the next slide, we are hitting kind of into the next 6 months and what we will release. It can literally come anytime, but no later than April is where we will be lighting up some of these things. And one of the investment areas is really the whole professional developer tooling, which is not ever going to replace the low-code, no-code experience, but it's essentially allowing you to collaborate with professional developers where they can go and do high code and integrate into the solutions. Also work with independent software vendors who want to build out entire solutions that they can deploy to customers as well. So there's a lot of tooling in that space that we'll be investing in. Also, one of the other areas what we called out, which is a challenge today, which is really sharing outside your own tenant. Like, we will be investing in kind of the fine-grained ability to share, improve sharing, create managed access and permissions to both apps and data. And more importantly, we are working on allowing you to allow for guest users from a different Azure Active Directory. That is something that is coming probably in the beginning of the new year, which will open up for a lot more scenarios as well, where you're not constrained to your own tenant and your own enterprise directory. Also, we will continue to invest in the ability to package up, like the Canvas app, flows, etc., add other type of resources like Azure resources into that solution and concept. We mentioned connectors before. I think Dennis, you said like 100 connectors. We are actually at 230 now. Every day new connectors are coming out, and that's for two reasons. We continue to invest in connectors, but so does third parties. Like even if you have your own application, you can create custom connectors to that. But we also have third parties who officially publish and brand them, and that continue to add to our ecosystem as well. So it's not just about data under our preview. It's really essentially, it's such a large volume, different type of data that you can actually connect to and work with. Another part that is worth calling out here is a unified player and discovery experience. Today, we have two different experiences, whether you consume a Dynamics application, a Canvas app, or a model-driven app. We're unifying that entire experience. So as a user, you don't really care where it was built. You'll just go to powerapps.com, see all the different apps that are available, and just load them up depending on what has been built for you before. So it's just greater variety for how you can interact with application built. So a good way of democratizing the apps that are being built within the enterprise. Also, the ability to access data offline. We've had lots of feedback in that area. We'll do incremental changes there, but it's here so you can see we are kind of starting investing in that space for offline data sets. Also, we will continue to invest in deeper integration with both Power BI and Office 365. It is really making sure you can embed Power BI into Canvas app and the other way around. We have done work there, but we kind of have additional improvements we want to do. And also the ability to publish applications into teams. So today, when you're going to discover an application, you go to powerapps.com and you find an app. We get more and more feedback from users. They say, we really want to live in Microsoft Teams as our collaboration experience. I would like to just go there and discover an app. So we have already enabled the ability to embed a Canvas app into Teams, but we will now also focus on improving the publishing process. So as you create an app, in a single click, just push it all the way to Teams. So reducing all the different stages that you have to go through to publish. So this was obviously super quick, 10 minutes to just cover just what we just released, what is coming. I could talk about this for days. I don't get days, but at least you get a glimpse of kind of where you will see improvements coming moving forward. So with that, I can hand it back.
Thank you. That was a very good and concise overview. You mentioned one word a few times, and I just want to pick up on it, the word investment. Do you want to briefly talk about the size of the team in Microsoft that's developing the PowerApps framework and environment?
Yeah, from an organization, it's a pretty huge organization, right? The whole business application group is a large organization. And we kind of belong to what we call the platform team, which is really working across kind of the, like for the ISV experiences I just described, we have a separate team for the makers, the design experience, one for admin experience, one for the players, like, so you can start kind of adding the numbers up, but there's substantial amount of resources in many different teams that are actually working on these efforts and bringing these environments together.
And well done. You guys are making great progress, and we're seeing some good use cases out there.
That's good.
I'm going to wrap up and quickly speak about deployment, security for PowerApps, pricing, and resources that may be helpful to you. So firstly, what we're seeing with PowerApps is the ability to avoid a long, slow deployment cycle, which is common for certain kinds of applications. And as you saw with what Shane did, you simply get a notification on your device saying an app has been published to you. You click on the app, you open it, and then you can pin it to the home screen so it behaves like a normal app. And you can cluster your apps in folders and move them around. So it makes it very easy and very quick to distribute apps. And each time you open an app, that app then updates. So they're evergreen apps, and you get the latest version of the app whenever you want to run it, which is great. Briefly on security, this is a big topic, and because PowerApps give you the ability to move at speed, it raises questions around security. And people wonder, are speed and security mutually exclusive? Are we compromising security by going for speed? And so we want to address this, and we actually published a blog article on this just a couple of hours ago. If we think about security in terms of the stack, the layers of the stack, so the user's identity, the app itself, the device it resides on, the data that's being handled, and the connectivity back to the data source. If we think about the layers we get with PowerApps, then clearly we have to be within the AD environment and Azure AD. We can choose to use single sign-on and two-factor authentication. We can then choose to use an MDM platform such as Intune, or it could be VMware AirWatch or Mobile Iron. We deploy PowerApps as a managed app, so we have full control over it. If the device ever gets compromised, we can remove the app and all the data. We can also apply app protection policies by using the Intune SDK. So what that means is we can apply very granular controls to each app, and we can specify whether an app can open in certain third-party applications. We can control or we can restrict where data is saved. We can restrict copy-paste actions, and the list goes on. So we can apply granular security controls to each Power App. The device itself, of course, can be managed by an MDM profile with all the usual compliance rules. And the device can also be configured with Apple device enrollment policy or Android Enterprise. And then, of course, the data is usually stored in the Microsoft Common Data Service, and that's subject to all the Azure controls and security. And then, of course, we can use App Proxy to get access to backend resources that we may need. And also we can apply conditional access to Power Apps, which means we can require that a user is within a specific geofence or hanging on a specific corporate Wi-Fi in order to open the Power App. So what have we got there? Probably 10 or 11 layers of security that can be applied to Power Apps. So I guess the answer to the question is speed doesn't necessarily mean we're dropping the ball on security, because it's been pre-built into the framework, which is very reassuring. I want to briefly touch on pricing. We believe most organizations who run a 365 tenant will be able to use Power Apps at no additional cost. So Power Apps is now included in all of the Office 365 plans and the Microsoft 365 plans. The exception to that rule is where you need to use external connectors, the premium connectors. Then you may need to pay the extra $7 per user to get access to that license. And the developers within your organization will need plan 2, which is $40. These are US currency. So most users, we believe, will be able to use PowerApps for free with a 365 tenant. And we've listed here some resources, and we'll send you the slides afterwards. So pricing, the premium connectors, custom connectors, services Mobile Mentor can provide to help you get started, and some good PowerApp case studies. And then we've got a series of blog articles we've written. Shane and others have written articles on how to get started with PowerApps, things you need to know, things that will be useful. So these are all available. And then finally, we've got a set of articles around security, mainly around EM+S, the Microsoft mobile security solution, and how that relates to PowerApps as well, the last article there. So all in all, we've got a set of resources here that we hope will be helpful as you embrace PowerApps and as you get on your mobile innovation journey, and hopefully this helps to accelerate that journey. So thanks to Shane and thanks to Julie. We're finished the presentation part of the webinar. And now what we'll do is look at the Q&A and see what questions we've got and take any more questions you might have for us. So the first question is, can this be used on Windows touchscreen computers in the field without internet access? So I'm guessing the answer is yes, if we have configured offline usage in the design and build process.
Yes, so the limitations there are, in order to initially get the Power App, you're obviously going to need an internet connection, right? Because it is distributed through the cloud, right? So you can't take a thumb drive and go plug it into the computer and have the Power App show up there. Once it's up and running, then as long as you left it up and running, it should be able to run on its own without an internet connection indefinitely, as long as you do not need it to send data out through a connector to some cloud thing, right? So there's caveats. Yeah. If your database is in the cloud and you want to talk to the database and you don't have an internet connection, obviously, no.
But you can cache.
Yeah.
And this is also where we will be investing moving forward, as in investing in that offline capabilities, where you can define what type of data needs to be available offline, etc., which really isn't there today. So there'll be, we for sure have had feedback in that area, and we will be investing much more there.
Okay. I'm going to read out a second one. If the computer has an SQLite database on the computer, can PowerApps be used on this same computer, assuming we install Office 365?
So the limitation there, and I'm going to take the screen just to show you. Show you my desktop real quick. These are the current SQL connectors that are available. So you have SQL Server, MySQL, Postgre, and Azure. So if you can connect to your database via one of these connectors, then yes, it would work. But otherwise, you're going to be into the custom connector land, and that's going to be a little bit more technical to sort out. And all of this stuff is obviously designed for cloud. So if it's on like a physical machine within your network, then again, you can do it. It's going to require a PowerApps 2 license for your dev and a PowerApps 1 license for each user that wants access to it.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions from the audience? Okay, if not, we'll finish here. A good webinar is a short webinar, so we give everybody back 10 minutes in your day. So thanks again to Shane and to Julie for all your work in preparing and supporting us with this. I would like to thank the audience, and we'll share the slides and the resources with you afterwards. And hopefully this has been really helpful. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us for any questions you may have afterwards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.